This episode is brought to you by Chris y Ángel and their legendary quote, porque vinimos a pariciar y no pa' dormir.
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, my people.
Hello, my people. ¿Cómo están, damas y caballeros? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer Podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. I am Stephan Dyer, former banker turned comedian and lifestyle entrepreneur. And this episode with Jen Aucoin is gonna be incredible. You don't even know you don't even know what to expect. Jen Aucoin is a full-time instructor, adjudicator, master trainer, and event organizer. She's the founder and co-director of Steps Dance Studio in Toronto and has taught workshops in Puerto Rico, Europe, South America, Mexico, the US, and across Canada. Jen is the founder and producer of the annual Canada Salsa and Bachata Congress, now in its 18th year. It's of age now, can drink in Quebec, this Congress. Jennifer has judged World Championships and elite competitions in Puerto Rico, New York, Ecuador, Las Vegas, Mexico, Orlando, Miami, Detroit, and throughout Canada. She has represented Canada on the judging panel at the ESPN World Salsa Championships and the World Salsa Summit and the World Latin Dance Cup. How about that? You are in for a treat, my friends. If you like this episode, do not forget to share it with your friends. Our favorite is when you screenshot it and you tag us on Instagram. How can you tag us? Go on the show notes of this episode and you can look at our Instagram, all our social media handles. My friends, are you ready? Please welcome the unbreakable, the unmistakable, the highly capable, the invincible Jen Aucoin. How are you, Jen?
I'm really much better now.
I am so excited to have you here. I want to send a shout out to our mutual friend Enrique, aka Obama, for introducing us years ago. And I guess even before the pandemic, I think we had talked a couple times, or during the pandemic when I launched the podcast, and you are a boss woman. I love everything you've done. This is the 18th year of the annual Canada Salsa and Bachata Congress. How did your journey with Salsa and Bachata start, and how did the Congress start? Because it's very different, at least in my case, to doing stand-up comedy and then doing a stand-up comedy festival. It's a whole different game. How did your journey with salsa and dance start, and how did the festival start?
So I started doing gymnastics and ballet as a child.
Yeah.
I grew up as a gymnast. I did ballet for many years. And just before I started university, I went to the Dominican Republic on vacation.
Where did you go to the university?
I went to Ryerson.
For what?
Applied geography and urban planning.
Wow.
Totally not using that degree.
Yeah.
And I went to the Dominican and I stepped off the plane and there was musicians on the tarmac. There was musicians on the beach, in the restaurants, in the hotel. Everywhere I went, they were playing this infectious, amazing, joyful music. And I started learning how to dance merengue. And I just fell in love with the music and the culture and the dance. And somebody that worked in the hotel from all of the Canadian tourists knew about a nightclub in Toronto and said, oh, well, if you love to dance, you should go check out El Rancho.
Wow.
And,
El Rancho by College?
Yeah,
Bathurst?
College and Bathurst.
Wow.
So, and I was like, there's no way people dance like this in Toronto. And they said, yeah. The people who come here from Toronto always tell us that they go dancing at this club. So I got back.
This is early 2000s.
This is before that.
Wow.
No, they've been around longer.
I didn't even know El Rancho had been around.
They've been around for, I think, at least for sure 30 years, but I would say probably 35 at least. They've been around for a very long time.
That's incredible.
Yeah. And so they kept telling me about this club. So when I got back, I went with a friend of mine on a Saturday night and we went for dinner. And then we asked the waitress, like, do people dance here? She's like, yeah, come back after 11.
Wow.
So we left, we came back and we walked in and it was like the angels were singing like, woo, it was crazy. Cause I didn't know that we had that in Toronto. It was never exposed to me.
At this point, your only class had been at the resort in the Dominican.
Not even a class. It was like kind of just watching people dancing and like trying to, dance merengue with them.
And something clicked.
And so, I just loved it. I loved it. And so I started going out dancing all the time, every night. And then I just started taking, at the time, Berlin was a big club at Yonge and Eglinton. So I started taking lessons there. And then it just snowballed. I just became addicted to it. And even like in university, my professors knew like if I wasn't at an 8 o'clock class, it was because I had gone out dancing the night before. Yeah, I was a very good student, but I was always at clubs till like 2 a.m, like 6 nights a week.
What?
Yeah, 6 nights a week. I worked like 20 hours a week. I went to school full time and I went out dancing every night.
That is incredible. There's this podcaster, Naval, who says that the things that you should pursue, I always quote Naval. Our listeners are like, Naval again. But there's this episode called How to Get Rich Without Getting Lucky. And it's 3 hours of breaking down success.
Wow.
And it's about becoming wealthy in all the areas of your life. It's like the Magna Carta of success. And I love studying high performers and successful people. So he says that you should double down on the things that look like work to others but feel like play to you. And when I listen to you say that, I'm like, I've probably invested the same amount of time on stage or doing things about public speaking and comedy and writing and sketch comedy videos that for other people would look like work, but to me feels like play.
Right.
And ironic that maybe you look at this time as purely play, because once you yes, you still dance and you love it, but once there's a business aspect of it, inevitably it takes you can still play, but there's a lot of admin stuff that goes on, which clouds a little bit.
It becomes a business.
Absolutely. So
it becomes work.
So let's stay back there. So you go to El Rancho, you're in university, you're working 20 hours a week, full-time student, full-time dancer apparently at nights. And how does this evolve from there?
So I was going out 6 nights a week because at that time, Monday nights, there was nothing open. So Monday was laundry day. And I started assisting because I had already taught during all of my high school years. I taught ballet, I taught gymnastics, I was teaching aerobics. So I was already a teacher. And so when I went to university, a lot of the parents of the kids I taught, they said, "Oh, you're going into like teachers college?" I'm like, "No, I'm going into urban planning." And they're like, "Oh, interesting choice." But it was something I loved. And so I just eventually, because I was dancing so much, I was at these classes a lot, I started assisting the teacher.
Wow.
And it was just normal for me because I had been teaching since I was 13. So it was common for me to teach. So I learned really fast. I started to teach really quickly and just went out all the time. And that just kind of kept going. And then I finished university and during university, I was also teaching ballet, teaching gymnastics, teaching aerobics. So I was still teaching dance. I was teaching dance at a day camp in the summers where I was teaching.
What type?
I was teaching salsa merengue like to kids. And so after university, I went to work for 1 year in my field at Scotiabank.
Well,
so I was going to tell you,
are Latina.
Already back then. So I was a location analyst for Scotiabank at their head office. And I worked for a year, which was in my field. So it was analyzing, which branches should be open, renovated, closed, based on, demographics. And that year, I started reading The Vein of Gold, which is by the author of The Artist's Way.
Wow.
Julia Cameron. So I just saw today. I don't even know where I saw it. The Artist's Way changed your life.
Have you talked about this?
No, but The Vein of Gold changed my life.
Wow. Okay, we just did a water break because I forgot to bring the water in the official Stephan Dyer Podcast mug. So let's talk about the Artist's Way and the Vein of Gold. Mm-hmm. So for context, I'll say what the Artist's Way is, and then because I didn't know this one existed, you can say if it's similar or different. Yeah. And I want to explain it because this could be a game changer for all of you, especially if you listen to this podcast. You're probably into personal growth. You're probably growth mindset, mostly. And you always want more, not in the vain sense of the word, but in like continual growth sense of the word. So, The Artist's Way is a book by Julia Cameron where I think it's 12 chapters. Every chapter is a week, and there's 2 rules. One of them is morning pages, and morning pages means that you have to write whatever happens, especially in the morning, ideally, 35 minutes of journaling, whatever comes to mind. And sometimes the questions and the exercises at the end of the book will prompt you on what to write. But regardless of the exercises, it's 35 minutes, which... No. It's 3 pages. 3 pages, but I had it down to 35 minutes.
Ah, okay.
So 3 pages, handwritten. Maybe you could do it on computer, but it tells you to do it handwritten. And I had it down to 35 minutes. Anything that comes to mind. And it's incredible how your problems kind of get solved on the page. And you learn like so much about you. It's like a masterclass about you. And then you do the other thing that it's mandatory, which is an artist date with yourself, which is once a week, not with your significant other, not with your kids, not with your colleagues. No, an artist date for you. 2 hours a week where you go and you do whatever you want for yourself, for fun, because you gotta... I guess the premise is that as we grow up sometimes, we stop nurturing the inner child and it doesn't come out and play anymore, to the point that you don't know, you think you know yourself because you live inside this body, but you don't. And it's a process of re-knowing, rediscovering who you are. And I did it at the beginning of the pandemic.
Oh wow.
And it was just
hard to do during the pandemic.
No, it was ideal because I didn't have to do anything.
Right. The artist dates, because you can't really go to a museum or do something inspiring.
Like, productivity focused and obsessed with productivity that I don't allow myself to play. Ironically, I'm a comedian. Maybe that's why I picked it. But just like watching a movie to me is like play, which I never allow myself to do, or a documentary. Sometimes I feel guilty of having fun. So it was a big game changer for me. I think I didn't finish chapter 12 or 11, but I got it down to 153 consecutive days of journaling, which was like enough to change your life. This was like 5 months maybe.
I think it's so funny that you know how long it took you to write the morning pages and for how long you did it, because that didn't matter to me.
Yeah, to me.
It's a very different...
Yeah. I'm like so numbers and productivity obsessed that I have to focus.
Yeah.
To put that aside and allow myself to play. How was The Vein of Gold?
The Vein of Gold is very similar. So I will also say I never finished the book. So the first 3 chapters changed my life.
Wow.
And I will say I've never gone back to finish it because I'm kind of afraid to change it again. So it was morning pages, and how I would describe it was 3 pages of stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
And so you're not even necessarily writing in paragraphs or full sentences. It's whatever comes to your head. It could be something you dreamt about, something you're worried about, something you want, something you're feeling. It could be anything. Absolutely. And nothing has to be in any order. And I always did it I tried to always do it handwritten because they do say it connects to a different part of your brain. But I will say that because I started it, I did it for a year. And part of that time I was at Scotiabank and I wasn't super busy in my job there. Yeah. So part of the time on weekdays, I would do my morning pages on my computer. So sometimes it was handwritten, sometimes it was not. And what kept coming out, and I did the artist dates. So I think Vein of Gold.
The artist dates? What's that?
The artist date, what you just said.
Oh, yeah.
The artist date. So it was like something that inspires you or something that is playful or fun or just for you. So I started doing those two things, but it was really the morning pages that changed my life.
Absolutely.
And what kept coming out in the morning pages was that, and this was the first time I'd ever worked in the corporate world. So before that, I had always worked in community centers. I'd always worked with kids. I'd always worked at day camps or teaching. So it was very kind of laid back, and you could, wear what you want, and you could sometimes be outside with the kids. It wasn't so, I was never sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
And so when I started this job, I had like ants in my pants. Like I would literally sit at my desk and I would think to myself, okay, what time is it? Because the clock was behind me. I'm like, okay, I bet you it's 12. And I would look and it was like 9:45. No. And I would just get like, I would have all this pent up energy because my jobs had been so physical.
Yeah.
So I was on the 22nd floor
40K?
And I would just go and take the stairs. I would just take a break every couple of hours and climb 10 flights of stairs and come back to my desk because I didn't know how to sit there for so long.
That is incredible.
And so when I was writing the morning pages, what kept coming out was, I want to set my own hours. I want to work when I feel like it. I want to go outside if I feel like it. I don't ever want to wear pantyhose again. I want to be around people. I want to be my own boss. I want to do what I love. I want to teach. And I don't even know if it was, and these were not things that necessarily came out every day. It was just every once in a while in the morning pages, these things would come out. And I wasn't really aware of it at the time. So a year after I started the morning pages and a year after I started that job, I decided to quit.
Love it.
And I went back to a community center to run a dance program for them while I started teaching salsa classes on the side. And I started teaching one class a week at this, it was called the English Spanish House. It was a Spanish language school. I started teaching one class a week, and within a year, I built it up to 9 classes a week.
Wow.
And a year after I quit my job, I remember looking back at my morning pages, and I had everything.
That's incredible.
I had everything that I'd written. My life had completely changed. So I quit the community center, and I started teaching salsa full time.
That is unreal. As I listen to you speak, I'm like, you and I right here, the podcast was born out of the morning pages. This room, we didn't live in this apartment. We lived the one across the street, which we moved here because my baby needed a room, and we were doing sleep training, and it was just, we were sleeping on the couch so that he could sleep in a dark room.
Yeah.
Anyways, and I envisioned this room. That Kanban board, goals board, was born in the morning pages because I'm very visual. I'm very goal oriented. I'm very productivity obsessed, and I'm like, listen, there's like areas of my life, and I need a way to be able to monitor these things. So it just, because there are no mistakes.
Yeah.
It allows you to draw stuff, to write stuff, to give yourself some time that now everybody's busy. Everybody's busy. Mm-hmm. Even if they're not busy, they're busy, and you don't allow yourself to ask yourself, what do I really want? So you dedicate years of your life to just going with the flow, and then you reach 40, 50, 60, 70, and you're like, what the fuck happened?
Yeah.
Where am I, So these little things are like so important to understand. Is this what I want? I don't think there's another life. I think this is it for us, and I want to win. I want to have a great time. I want to be a great dad. I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great comic. But if I would have stayed at the bank, those don't align with my goals. Mm-hmm. And then a lot of people may be thinking, well, how do I know if what I'm doing aligns with my goals? Well, you can't know if you don't know what your goals are. And even if you don't have written goals in the morning pages, it'll come out what you really want. And it asks you very specific questions about, what do you enjoy as a kid? What are things that you did? What are your best memories? What compliments have you received? When have you enjoyed the most? That has nothing to do with money. All these little things that allow you to rediscover who you really are. And I feel that people had a rough time at the beginning of the pandemic. Obviously, very respectful to the health side of the pandemic because it was true, it was serious, and a lot of people died. But what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people had challenges at the beginning of the pandemic because they were forced to work from home and be at home and have a hard look in the mirror of like, wow, I've been so focused on my career that I have abandoned the other areas of my life. They've abandoned
themselves.
Yeah. And I haven't put in the time, or I was scared. So I haven't seen my family. I haven't, lifestyle side of my life. I don't have fun. My relationships are suffering. I don't see my family. My finances maybe are good because I've been working this whole time, or maybe not. My spirituality, my physical side, I'm overweight because I don't do sports because all I do is I sit around at a desk for 50 weeks a year and zero personal development. So people were now at home, and at home you're reminded of these things because at the office you want to be good at the office, but at home you have to take a deep look at yourself. So these morning pages, if you're listening,
life-changing.
Yeah, life-changing.
I also think the morning pages, for me, it wasn't about goals. Like, you're very goal-oriented and productivity-oriented. I'm going to be very blunt and say I don't usually have goals. Or I don't call them goals. Maybe to me, goals is like a dirty word. I don't know. There's something in my brain that when I think of the word goal, it stresses me out. But I know what I want. I know what I know who I am. I know what I desire. I know what I am. I know what I want more of and what I want less of. And so I think that comes out in the morning pages. And I think when you also do it by hand, there's something where you tap into your intuition.
Yes.
And it just bubbles out. It's not, you can't even control it. It just comes out on the page. Sometimes it was almost like my hand was writing for me.
Yes.
Right? It's not your brain that's writing. It's a different, deeper part of you that's writing.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's not like you have to, like, you're going to come out with your top 10 goals for 2023. No, it's not about that. It's not like, at the end you're going to have like, I want to run a marathon under an hour and 55, like 3 hours and 55 by December 31, 2020. No, it's not about that. But it'll come out what you want to do more, who you want to be more, and from those you can derive some goals if you choose to. But like you said, it's like I like to call it a master class in self-awareness. And self-awareness is one of the biggest gifts that you can give yourself, because sometimes you'll be pursuing things that you don't even like to impress people you don't even like
or no.
Yeah.
I have another book for you.
Yeah.
It's by a Canadian author named Danielle Laporte.
Okay.
And it's called The Desire Map. And that, to me, I think like every few years there's a book that comes along that makes me really reevaluate things. Whoops. And so the Desire Map asks a bunch of questions, a bunch of exercises, a bunch of personal growth exercises. How do you want to feel?
Yeah, that's critical.
And distilling it down to 4 or 5 words. And those guide your decisions. Those guide your to-do list. Those guide how you live your life every day.
I love it.
So I would recommend the Desire Map.
Oh, we have the Desire Map, because you know what, for my first 2 years since I quit the bank, and we're gonna go back to you quitting the bank as well. You are a Latina because you were at Scotiabank, like all Latinos in Toronto.
It's so true.
And now I don't have goals. 2017, 18, 19, I was all about the goals and really breaking them down, which is good. But now it's less about the goal and less about the what and more about my being. Who do I want to be?
Being, not doing.
Being, not doing. And it's really helped me out, because sometimes the goal will be a very clear and concise what, but on the flip side, it could constrain you of becoming something else. So I've just been focusing on the being more than the doing. And ironically, I feel that it's increased my possibilities and I'm not constraining myself into just that part.
Yeah, because if you're just thinking of doing, it's like you have blinders on.
Yeah.
So how she describes the desire map is if you take a goal, let's say your goal is to become a famous comedian. She will ask you, well, why do you want to be a famous comedian? How will you feel when you are a famous comedian?
Absolutely.
And maybe you will feel fulfilled. Maybe you'll feel grateful. Maybe you will feel at peace. And so she's like, it doesn't matter if you attain becoming a famous comedian. What matters is that you feel at peace and you feel fulfilled and you feel all those things. So she's like, let's just forget about the actual end goal and let's just see why we want to feel that. And then you choose these feelings and that's what you're working towards.
Absolutely.
And when I work on it, I did it for two or 3 years, like every kind of between Christmas and New Year's, I would think about what my new words were going to be for the year. And it was awesome. And I really slacked this year. Everything got really busy this year. But I'm going to do it again this coming Christmas. But it really changes. So every morning you say those words to yourself and every night you say those words to yourself before you go to bed. And it really affects everything.
Tony Robbins has a quote that is probably one of my top 3 quotes in the world. And it's like, I used to achieve to be happy. Now I happily achieve. And Naval has a quote that goes, escape competition through authenticity. Mm-hmm. So I used to so achievement driven to the point that my self-worth was more aligned to my achievements, where I was like, well, when I get this, I'll be worth it in comedy or in banking or in whatever. But then as soon as you get that, you just extend the finish line and it's never ending, But if you do it the other way around, where you know your self-worth and you know you're enough, and obviously you have to work hard. You can't just be like, I'm enough and do nothing. And you got to work hard in the things that you love, which will make you better at them because you love them. And then you will become the kind of person that luck follows them because you've performed at a high level because you enjoy these things and you know you're enough, as opposed to just being miserable the whole time until you achieve something and then you're just like, oh, this wasn't what I expected it to be.
Yeah, I also think when you're open to possibilities. I think sometimes if it's achievement oriented, it's very linear.
Yeah.
And there's one goal at the end. And if it's more about creating a life that you love or creating a workspace that you love or an environment that you love, there's many different ways to do that. There's many different kind of not end goals, but there's many different achievements in quotes that come along the way. It's not just the end.
I love it.
So you open up the possibilities.
I like to. Have you done Landmark?
I have not done Landmark,
but
Enrique told me about it all the time. And I did do, I've done similar things.
Okay.
And I also did one of, he did one online and I went in for
Shadow? Oh yeah.
No, they're like
invitation.
The invitation, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, so Enrique, and I did like a bunch, I think not more than Enrique because he's done I think I've done 5 or 6 and I think he's done more. But one of the things that we're talking about, there's a distinction which I have it there actually, which is basically commitment versus attachment. I could be attached to being on Netflix and I won't be happy until I get to Netflix, and I'm attached, maybe my self-worth is attached to that outcome. But the distinction is I'm committed to being the greatest comedian I can be. I'm not attached to that result, but I'm committed to greatness. And it's freeing and it's full of possibilities and it's less stressful. Mm-hmm. And you're not delaying happiness at the expense of that outcome. So I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, going back to quitting Scotiabank. You start 1 class a week, then you start teaching 9 classes a week. And how does this evolve into steps?
So I started teaching basically full time. I started teaching every night. I was renting different spaces around the city. I was teaching. And then I went with a few other teachers from Toronto. We heard about this thing called a salsa convention.
Where?
the first one ever was in Puerto Rico.
Wow.
The first one we went to was in Washington, D.C. And I don't even know how we found out about it, but we drove. There was 5 of us. And we drove there, and I had no idea. So what happened at that weekend, well, I didn't sleep. I was like dancing the whole time just wired the rest of the time, because I met all these amazing instructors from all over the world. And a lot of them had been teaching for decades.
Wow.
And they were master teachers, and it was their career. So when I quit Scotiabank, it wasn't like I thought I'm going to be a salsa teacher and I'm going to open up a dance school. Like, that was never in my head, ever. I never had the idea of opening up a full-time school, never had the idea of starting a convention, nothing. This was just like, I thought, okay, right now I want to be happy. I want to do what I love. I don't want to work for somebody. I'm going to do this. I never expected it to last for my adulthood. I thought it would be like, I was young, it was fun, I would do it for now.
Was it controversial with your parents?
No, my parents were pretty chill. I was like a straight A student all through school, okay. And I was very independent. My parents didn't have a choice as to what high school I went to, what university I went to. I decided. So I was reading novels at the age of 6. And so I started reading self-help books when I was 9, 10.
What?
So I was really, it was like a weird...
You've been manifesting this whole time.
A little bit. I actually found a book that I read when I was 17, and I reread it. I forget what the name of it is. I have it at home.
But it's not The Secret.
No, it's not The Secret, but it was kind of like a self-help-ish book. And I realized that when I reread it 5 years ago, I thought, oh, that's why I think the way I think. Wow. I didn't realize how much it changed my perspective, and it kind of flavored the way I think.
But it's not Think and Grow Rich.
No. Okay. No, it's not a famous book. I don't even remember. It's almost like a workbook, almost like something from Landmark, like an exercise book that my friend had given me. Where was I? So my parents, they asked me one time, "Are you sure?" And I said yes, and they went, "Okay." And they never,
that's incredible.
They never really questioned it again. And there was one woman at Scotiabank that was amazing. She was like a, total banker by day, looked the part, acted the part. She was like a manager. She was high up, and she was very, successful and very corporate.
Yeah.
But she rode a Harley, and she used to go on these Harley trips, through the US, where they have those big parades, those rallies with all these Harley people. And I remember my last day, she came up to me and she said, "You should get out of here. Good for you. This is not for you." And she's like, "You go and do your thing." So she was amazing. She was really cool.
It's incredible how other people that are near you every day, they notice things that you don't.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I did the same thing, some people were almost save yourself while you can.
Yes,
it's too late for me.
Yes, exactly. Nobody was, I don't know. I don't remember clearly because it was so long ago, but nobody really was super surprised, and nobody really tried to talk me out of it. Not one person.
Wow.
And I also don't remember, I think this is maybe my brain playing tricks with me. I don't remember it being that scary. Maybe at that age I was so young that I was like, oh, whatever.
Ignorance is bliss. Right?
I didn't, at that, you don't need a lot of money. I just come out of university, so I'm used to living on a budget, and it was fine.
No dependence.
No dependence. Exactly.
So it seems like this Washington D.C. experience opened your eyes as to this could be a career. Completely.
I saw, these people, this is their career. They have mastered the art of teaching. They have mastered what they do, and this is their craft. And they're not 25. These are 50-year-olds and 55-year-olds and 45-year-olds, and these are people that have done it their entire lives. And it was respectable, and they were looked up to, and they had so much knowledge. So I thought, wow, I had no idea. And then that just changed it, because when we came back, we started teaching more and teaching workshops and giving specialty classes, and it just changed how I danced, how I taught, how I saw it. And at that first event, I met a whole bunch of New York salseros, and I met one man in particular, David Melendez, and he became a mentor for me. And he was he was older. He owned a school in New York that he taught children, and in the Bronx. And he also has started the first New York Salsa Congress.
Wow.
And so for years, so I started going to, once you go to one Congress,
it's game over. You're going again.
You're going again. I've never met somebody who went to a Congress and said, yeah, that's it. I don't really need to do that again. Like never, ever.
Is there a specific reason why it's called Congress? I love the Congress word.
I think because in Spanish it's called Congreso.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so it's like a place to learn and a place to gather.
Or no?
There's a vendor marketplace. It's more like a place to learn and to grow from originally. It's like sometimes I think when they use the word convention, people think of it as a trade show. Festival, sometimes people think it's just a party.
Oh,
so it's just different connotations. So it's always
the word Congress. It makes it legit.
Yeah, and a lot of them aren't called congresses. A lot of them are called festivals. Some are called conventions. Some are called congresos. But in the beginning, most of them were called a congreso. So
I love it.
Yeah.
These people mostly, I don't want to generalize, but Latinos, the instructors, or there were a lot of Canadians or maybe from Europe?
At that time, at that first one I went to in Washington, they were all Latinos. They were all, or like New Yorkers.
Yeah.
And then as I started traveling, so once I started going, we went to like 7 in the next 2 months. We traveled we went to New York, Washington, LA, Puerto Rico.
I love it. Who is we?
Like the group of 5
in the car that went to Washington, DC?
I think 2 or 3 of the 5 in the car that went to Washington. We just kept going to all the different ones. And then we started a dance team, and then we started a performance team. And so it just grew. When we went to Puerto Rico that summer, this was before YouTube.
That is crazy.
This was before YouTube. So we didn't know what other salsa dancers were doing around the world. We didn't know where salsa was. We didn't know who else taught salsa. We didn't know where they had salsa in Winnipeg or Montreal. We didn't know. You had no contact. There was no Instagram. There was no Facebook. There was no YouTube. So we get to Puerto Rico and we're so excited to be there. We think we're the only Canadians. And like the first night we hear, and from Montreal, Canada. And we're like, what? There's dancers in Montreal. So we met they're still friends of mine today. They're coming to my Congress in a few weeks. And yeah, we started to meet people from all over the world, especially the Puerto Rican one. There was literally people from all different countries. And so you start to see that it's international. People are dancing salsa everywhere. I
want to pick your brain on 2 things because you have so much rich experience and obviously teaching experience. As when I hear your story, I'm like, we have a pretty similar story.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that weird?
And when I listen to you go to these 5 in the next 2 months to 5 congresses, when we quit the bank in 2017, first of all, I talked to Juan and my business partner. We both quit the bank at the same time. We were both senior managers. And Juan was like, this was like September when we were discussing it. I spoke to my girlfriend, now wife. I'm like, would you support me? So as I said, we were roommates with Enrique.
Yeah.
We moved to a smaller place. Enrique's dad came up, so he stayed with the apartment. And then I moved to a smaller one with my wife. And Juan was like, yo, let's quit next month. I'm like, no way, bro. First of all, I wasn't really convinced because our parents had sacrificed so much for me to have this amazing job and study at U of T, finance and all these things. But I'm like, I'll quit or will quit if you want. We ended up quitting together, but on April 5th, because April 4th is the day that I can apply for my citizenship. So April 4th, I applied. April 5th, I quit. Although I gave them a 2-month notice in case this didn't work out and I could go back to the bank. And then April 6th, we went on a 3-week tour through Miami, Costa Rica, and Colombia to do shows. And looking back, we sucked. But it didn't matter because we're so excited. So excited to perform and meet other comics and see how other things worked. And the learning in these, although you can't see it because you're so excited at that time, it's just so much learning that you're doing from others and the networking too and the friendships long term.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter. Now I'm like, whoa, I had balls to go and perform at all these places, sucking as much as I did back in the day, And maybe in 5 years I'll think about now, I'm like, oh, I kind of sucked back in 2022, but it doesn't matter because I was committed, I was all in.
Yeah.
And the things that you're really good at right now, it's because you sucked at them at the start.
Exactly.
And that's, otherwise you peak too early, or if you get everything that you want, then it's probably, you're gonna drop that thing anyways at the beginning or whatever. But listening to your story, I'm like, it's very similar. Then people after shows are like, could you teach us a workshop?
Right. Then you started teaching.
And then I started teaching simultaneously as we quit, like a couple months before we quit. We started teaching this workshop because people would see us after shows and they'd be like, could you teach us how to overcome the fear of speaking and connect with audiences through humor? And we didn't know, but we said, yeah, we'll teach a workshop. And it just spiraled into something bigger to the point that now we have a school and hundreds of students have taken our workshops. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you about teaching, and I want to ask you about the business side of the hobby, which started as a hobby at the beginning. So what I feel like, in my view, at least for us, the curriculum, the syllabus of what we teach, which is called public speaking through comedy, I wouldn't say anybody, but a lot of people could teach it. It's the syllabus. You can learn it. But the delivery of the teaching and the connection with the students and the relationship that you build for them, it's what really matters. Because how many salsa academies are there in the world? 1 billion.
Yeah.
How many people teach comedy? 1 billion. But what's going to get them to come back? So you have to be professional, obviously, but you got to build that environment where they feel like they're seen and heard and there's a really good relationship. So we put a lot of effort into that. What have you learned about teaching through the years?
I think being a good teacher is very separate from being a good dancer.
I love that.
I think there's a lot of really great dancers, and that does not make them a good teacher. Sometimes it
does. That are not really good teachers.
Exactly. Sometimes a great dancer can be a great teacher. Sometimes not. I think some people have an innate skill of just knowing how to teach and how to break things down. Yeah. I think once you teach one thing, you can usually teach other things. It's a separate skill. I think for myself, and so I started Steps Dance Studio like 22 years ago, and then one of my students then became my business partner.
Wow!
So he started at Steps as a beginner. Yep. He's now co-owner of Steps, and I think for both of us, I think the first few years I was just teaching by myself, or I would maybe get somebody to teach the advanced classes with me to have a partner, and I was just renting space. And then I opened my own studio. I rented like full-time space, but I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't understand, you don't just have to pay rent. You also have to pay like electricity and you have to pay all these things. And it was really overwhelming. And I didn't feel like I could afford to have people help me. I couldn't pay people to help me. Yeah. So after a few years, I was like, I just want to scale down. I want to scale back. And so I did. And then I actually decided I changed.
How did that scaling back look like?
I gave up my lease? Not having a lease. So I gave up my permanent studio space, and I didn't renew the lease after the first 5 years, and I just subleased from somebody. And I wanted everything to be smaller and more manageable. And then, I don't know, something just happened where I just felt like, I need to give it another shot and see what happens. And I met a teacher I was judging at a competition in San Diego, and I started talking to this couple that were also judging, and they had talked to me about how they ran their school, and I just started to get ideas. So I changed the format of the school. I changed how we ran it. Angelo came on board as my business partner. So he had been a student, and then he had been on our dance team, and then I had trained him to teach, and then he became a business partner. And I think for us, half of our job is creating community, if not 90% of our job.
Yes.
It's creating community, and that's why we do it. That's why we love it. We love the community that has developed at our studio and in the city, around the world. The salsa community is really special, and it's a beautiful community. And so I want people to come to the studio every day because they love to be there.
Yeah.
And because they meet friends there, and they might meet their future husband there, and they bring their kids there, and it's amazing. Like, we have like 4 couples in the past month that have gotten engaged that met at our studio. And we have a couple who comes with their baby, and their baby sits in the stroller, Cora, and she sits there and she just watches her parents take their dance class. And it just and everybody knows baby Cora, and everybody talks to her. And if she starts to get fussy, somebody will go and play with her and keep her entertained while mom and dad take their dance class. And I think for me, and that's why we do it, is the community.
I joke around a lot at my shows, and I have this networking event that I host where I help Latinos get jobs, and I tell people, we joke around about people not having papers in Canada, Latinos, and I'm like, you want to get papers? I know so many people, like at least 6 that I've heard that met their partner, their husband or wife or spouse at at salsa classes.
Yeah.
It is incredible. And the reason, this is my hypothesis, we say this a lot in our public speaking workshops, our speaking with confidence workshops, is because relationships move at the speed of vulnerability, and vulnerability builds trust. And what more vulnerable than dancing salsa, especially
and learning how to dance salsa.
Yeah, learning how to dance salsa. Because just the being there is you saying, I want to learn, which by definition means I need help. I have the courage to show up, and other people are there too. And because you're being vulnerable, and courage, well, vulnerability is courage, the friendships of the people who are there advance at a much greater speed than other environments where everybody's just trying to be perfect or faking that they have everything under control. And because it builds trust, then you get couples.
Yeah, I mean, inherently, when you're learning how to dance, there's a leader and a follower, and it's nonverbal communication, and you're trusting the other person. So the follower has to surrender and literally trust that the leader is going to lead.
I love it.
And so the other thing I think that's really interesting about the salsa community is most people don't know what people do for a living, how much money they make, where they live. It doesn't matter. It matters, are you a good dancer? Are you a good follower, a good leader? Are you fun? That's it.
I love it.
And so it's not pretentious. I think there's a lot of really pretentious environments in Toronto, especially in Toronto.
Such a good point.
And the salsa community has none of that. They don't care.
That happens in our classes too. Who cares? Like there's been a lot of couples from Malpensando in our classes because who cares it's not relevant if you're rich or poor or broke or, well, you got to be able to pay for the classes, obviously. But I mean, and comedy is truth and pain. Nobody likes a perfect person or expects you to be perfect. First of all, perfect
there's no
people are not funny
in that, yeah.
So, and it's like, dude, who cares? Like, take that to another place. Here, we're being real here. This is authenticity over perfection. So, a lot of similarities, and one of the greatest fears in the world is speaking in public, which is very vulnerable by definition. I want to ask you, to your point, when you start working with Angelo, you listen to these people's tips at San Diego when you were judging. There is this book called The E-Myth. Have you read it? Have you heard it? Okay.
Yeah.
This is another transformational book where it's about scaling and scaling efficiently. So growing your business, but doing it, well, your small business, in our case, well, in my case at least, Steps is probably IPOing anytime soon.
No.
Well, so the E-Myth, basically the premise, and my listeners are probably bored of me saying this all over again because I mention it a lot. It's basically, E-Myth is the name of the book, and it stands for entrepreneurial myth, which means that the entrepreneurial myth is that if you're good at the technical side of things, for example, baking a pie, the myth is that you should start a bakery. So people are like, oh, you're really good at dancing. Why don't you start a dance studio? However, it sounds great. However, the skill set to dancing, the technical side,
It's not the same as running a business.
It's not the same skill set to run a business that helps people learn how to dance. Because there's a technical skill, which is the dancing or the baking the pie. There's the managerial skill set to run the business on day to day. And then the third skill set, according to the book, is the entrepreneurial side, which is looking into the future and having ideas. But it is very rare that somebody will be very, very strong in the three of them.
You also don't have time to be good in all three of them.
Yeah, you don't have
There's
time.
no time.
What was this experience like for you where you were loving how to dancing, you're really good at it, you're traveling, and now you're starting a business, but you didn't study finance, you didn't have other leases. Like, we're all doing it for the first time, that first time. So what were the pain points and how did you overcome them?
I made a lot of mistakes. For instance, like I said, when I had my first lease, I had no idea how much the other monthly expenses were going to be.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that in a commercial space, your electricity could be $1,000 a month.
What?
Yeah. It's a big space. It's a studio.
I thought it was going to be like $65.
Yeah, because my apartment was $65, so why wouldn't my studio be, maybe double that? So there was a lot of learning curves. I think the biggest thing for me when I decided to kind of change it up and switch things around and give it kind of one more shot, we changed it to a membership program. So instead of having an 8-week session, it was a monthly membership. And that was a game changer because for us, it's about community. And I've never done anything. I mean, obviously, I need to make a living at what I do because this is the only thing that supports me. But I will never be a millionaire, and I don't need to be. We do it because we love it, and we do it because it's fulfilling, and because we love the community. But with the membership, people were there more often because they could be. Yeah. And they didn't have to pay extra. So they could come as often as they wanted, whenever their schedule allowed them to. They could meet more people because they could come on different days of the week rather than just one day. And the community grew. Everybody became more, I don't know what the word would be. It became a family.
Yes.
So they would come several times a week. They would meet all these other people, and it just snowballed. And so then we had to learn that we need to pay people to help. Like, we needed help with the administration of the business.
Yes.
You can't have
Delegating.
that. Yeah, it was really hard in the beginning for me to delegate. Then we started having, a front desk staff that could greet the students and take all the payments. And that was huge. And that took a whole load off. And I was like, great. Every time I think that I won't have to work 70 hours a week, then it works for like 3 months, and then something else happens. I'm like, I'm working 70 hours a week again. And so it's always been for me, it's always been a struggle of having balance because there's so much to do.
100%.
And so I still am not good at that. And I was better before the pandemic. It was working well. And then during the pandemic, I had lots of time. We were still teaching online, but obviously we all had more time. And now I'm like, whew, it's like, I don't remember how to work this much. So it's been crazy. So I think hiring people that you love to work with, hiring people that you trust, hiring people that you can enjoy spending time with them. We just, for the first time ever, we hired a full-time studio manager. We love her. She's amazing. And she's somebody I like spending time with. So I like having meetings with her. It's not like I dread having a business meeting. It's like, oh, I get to talk to her today. So I think that's really important. I think surrounding yourself with people that you have fun with. A lot of our staff and a lot of our instructors have been with us for 5-10 years, and they're, part of our chosen family.
I love it.
So yeah, delegating, hiring really good people, trusting your gut.
Is there anything that, are there any opportunities that you have let go that you're glad that you let go, that you didn't pursue?
Yeah, there was other spaces that I could have leased that in the end, I'm so glad we didn't, because I think the place we're in now is great. Years ago, a friend of mine, who's a salsera, she's Colombian, and her uncle is a very famous Broadway choreographer. And he reached out and wanted to hire me to basically run his auditions, run his rehearsals for a Broadway play that was opening in England, and then was going to come to New York and then travel all over the world. And it was like 3 months after I opened my first studio.
Wow.
And it was basically, do I keep my studio and everything I've worked for 10 years to build, or do I drop it and I just take this opportunity? And I said no to that one.
And you're glad you did?
Yeah, I'm glad I did, because I don't think it would have, I don't know. I think it would have led to a very different life, and not necessarily a life that I was in charge of.
I love it. What do you think are when you look at the professional salsa dancers that go into the World Cups, do you say World Cups? Yeah.
Yeah, World Championship.
World Championships. And let's say that they are, when you see professional dancers coming up, that you think, oh, these guys are taking it serious now. What things do you see in these people where you're like, yeah, this guy's going to go all the way to the top? It's not, and I don't mean talent necessarily wise, because maybe a lot of people have talent, but other things that maybe are non-tangible, soft skills or attitude wise, that you're like, this person is going to go a long way.
I mean, talent is part of it, but I think hard work and discipline. Everybody that I know that is really, really excelled as a competitor and as a performer has a coach. Ooh. And I think a lot of people that want to be full-time performers, or because there's a whole group of salseros around the world that all they do is travel. All they do is go from weekend to weekend, all different countries, different cities, to teach and perform at congresses.
Wow.
Like mine. And so they literally are they're in like 52 different cities, 52 weekends of the year.
I had no idea.
Yeah. And so it's a cool life, but it's also really exhausting, and you have to have. And sometimes if you're competing, you're also traveling every month to different competitions. So the ones, like there's a couple from Montreal, Adriano and Samantha, and they are the current reigning World Salsa Championships in the Ontu division. And they worked,
what's Ontu?
It's a style. It's like a type of salsa.
Okay.
So they divide the styles. And I've known them since they were 12, 13 years old.
Since they were 12?
Since they were 12.
And they knew each other when
they started dancing as like young teens together.
What?
Yeah. And now they're a couple, and they own a studio, and they run a business, and they compete, and they travel, and they teach.
A couple in salsa or in real life as well?
Both.
Wow.
Yeah. But for them, I'll take them as an example, because they worked their butts off. They hired coaches to train with. They traveled all over the world to train with the best in the business to become better. And what I will say for them is they know how to treat people. They talk to each other with respect. They talk to their students with respect. They're fun. They love what they do. They have a sense for business, and they have a sense for creativity and for art. And so I think it takes both sides. You can be an amazing, amazing dancer, but if you don't have the attitude of willing to work hard, or willing to work long hours, or willing to put in the time, or willing to invest not only your time but also your money to getting better. Yeah.
That's super important. I didn't know that there was a lot of salsa dancers who traveled every weekend to different
every weekend
cities.
Of the year. There's a congress somewhere in the world every single weekend of the year.
And do the congresses pay for them to come participate, or
If
they
you're
have sponsorships?
It depends on who you are. So if you're at that kind of A level, that tier of salsero where you are world renowned as instructors, then yeah, they pay for your flight, they pay for your hotel, they pay for your fee, they pay you to teach and perform. You're the invited artist, you're the headliners.
I love it.
And then there's other people who perform at congresses that are there because they want the opportunity to be on stage and to perform. And so they pay to attend the event, but they get a discount because they're performing, but they're also learning.
I love it. Tell me a little bit about what you see in people that take the salsa classes, because I'm sure that there's a before and after. Not just before and after the first lesson or the first course, but the reason why I'm asking and I'm sure is because when I teach people, and I know there's a lot of similarities, the number one thing that people say after the first 7-week course or after the 3 levels is the self-confidence, the confidence in who they are, and the ownership and pride of who they are that maybe they didn't have in other environments where it could be like standoffish or like statusy or whatever. What do you see in your students?
Definitely an increase in their confidence. Definitely more open.
Yes.
You know, some people come, they don't know anybody, they're quiet, they're shy, and then 2 months later, they're like the life of the party, and they know everybody by first name. And, you know, in our studio, a lot of people hug each other. It's not like a handshake or like a high environment. It's a hug. It's more like
Must
a
have been
Latino
tough in the
culture.
pandemic.
Well, we hugged anyway, mostly, but it's, you know, it's a hugging culture. And I think, you know, sometimes I see it in the way they dress. You know, they come like all closed up and, you know, suited up, and then over time, you know, especially the women, they start to just dress more relaxed, more feminine, or more flirtatious. A lot of them, you know, we have performance teams at our studio and competitors that train, and so a lot of them do it specifically because they want to get more comfortable presenting in front of others. Or for instance, you know, if you're competing in front of a crowd of 2,000 people,
Wow.
it's going to be a lot easier to stand up in front of 5 of your colleagues at work and give a presentation.
Absolutely. That's what I say.
It's exact same. Yeah, it's exact same. If you can dance in front of people, it's putting aside kind of your ego a little bit.
Yeah.
So we used to do this one exercise with our dance teams where we would, you know, they're all salseros, and we would kind of dim the lights and we would just make them go one by one. And it would be like performance training, and we would just play any type of music, non-salsa, no bachata, no salsa, no merengue. It could be like heavy metal or jazz or classical, and they would just have to dance.
I love it.
And it was, you know, super. Some of them would cry, and like some of them would run out of the room. They didn't want to do it. They would hate us. But in the end, once they had done it, and we did it a few times, and they would get better at it, they're like, oh wow, it's like life changing for some of them, because now they can let that guard down and be themselves.
I feel that there's so many similarities. There's this phenomenon that I see with my students sometimes, where not a lot of them, because 95% of my students don't want to become professional comedians, but there'll be like a 5% that want to see where it takes them, and they pursue it. And maybe they don't go in with that idea, but once they see and they do the grad show,
Yep.
they're like, oh, let's see where this takes me. And some of them are going to perform at the Latin Comedy Fest, which is a really cool way for us to not only reward them for their efforts and their time and the seriousness of how they've pursued this, but also because we're proud of how far they've come, and we want to showcase them in front of a larger audience. But I
do the same thing.
I love it. I see this phenomenon where in comedy, there's a lot of people that I disagree with, but there's a lot of people who's like, oh, you either got it or you don't. You're born with it or you're not. And we're of the opinion, and it's part of our core beliefs, that anybody can be a great speaker. Probably not the life of the party, but you can be a great speaker with who you are on stage. And you'll get these people who have been the life of the party their whole life in social environments where they feel that because they're funny with their friends, they come into class like, yeah, I'm going to kill this fucking class and I'm funny. Everybody tells me I'm funny. And that cockiness, ironically, makes them suck and be not the worst of the class, but it doesn't allow them to take risks because they feel like they know it all. Or you'll get people who have done comedy in the past who are like, yeah, I'm going to fucking kill this shit because I've done comedy in the past and I got some laughs. And then all the exercises, they just use their previous material.
They don't grow.
And they don't grow. And then you'll have the quote-unquote introvert that nobody in their office or at work would be like, oh, this guy could be funny. Ironically, the majority of comics are introverts. But you'll have this introvert who is humble and takes the opportunity to grow, and they acknowledge that they are, let's say from a 0 to 10, they're at a level 2. And because they take it seriously, and they're humble and they listen, and they're appreciative and respectful of the process, that they end up growing from a 2 to a 6 in one course, which is a huge win. That's like a 200% growth.
Yeah.
And I always talk to people after shows and they're like, no, I'm an introvert. I don't think I can do this. I wasn't born funny. I'm like, dude, you are the person that should do this. Like, you should. I feel like you have everything that it takes to be a great comic if you decide to pursue it seriously. Or even if you don't want to be a comic, to grow as a person through this process. Mm-hmm. Do you see something similar when it comes to salsa?
Absolutely. A lot of people come in. I think sometimes the cockiness is them being afraid that they're going to fail. I don't think it's because they think they're the best. I think it's that they're afraid they're going to be the worst.
Absolutely.
And so they portray this, I'm awesome. Defense mechanism of being cocky. Some of those types of people don't stay for very long.
Yes.
Because they're not willing to strip that away. And it's partner dancing, so you're feeding off the energy of your partner. And so if the partner is cocky and thinks they're God's gift to the world, they're probably not going to be a good partner. Yeah, it's all about them, whereas it has to be a give and take. I can name like hundreds of students that when they walked in the door, they were shy and timid and scared and, maybe didn't have like a natural ability to pick up moves quickly. But they stuck it out and they're committed and they love it. And so over time, you see like that they love it and you see the joy. I don't care if somebody is an amazing dancer. I care that they're having fun and that they're enjoying themselves. And I say that like a lot of the students, there's one thing about taking a class, but then they have to go out and dance at a club. They have to go out in public. And especially for the guys, it's terrifying. They're like, now I have to ask somebody to dance. Now I have to think about what I'm going to do every second of this dance and what moves I learned and what I remember, what I don't remember. And they always forget their moves and they freak out. And so I tell them like, you're going to have to go out at least 5 times and you're going to bomb and you're going to hate it.
Same as stand-up.
And exactly. And you have to keep going because it's just going to get better. And you see like a lot of, so we try to explain to the students, it's not about doing everything perfectly. It's that you're having fun and you're engaging with your partner. So a woman would rather dance with a guy who has only a few moves, but he's smiling, he's having fun with the music, he's paying attention to her, than some guy who's like hotshot amazing, but you could walk away to the bar and get a beer and he wouldn't notice you were gone. So it happens all the time.
Yes.
All the time. So that's a big one. And I also think I'm an introvert and I don't think it really, I can be on and I can be like around a bunch of people and I love teaching and I love teaching a huge crowd of people or a small group of people, but I recharge by being by myself. And I think it's because my whole adult life, I've been working in an environment of like loud music and tons of people and, it's a lot. It's a lot of energy. It's a lot to hold space for 50 people in a room. Absolutely. And make sure nobody's like yelling at anybody and they're all having a good time and they all leave. We want them to leave feeling better than when they walked in.
Absolutely. I just think I think you hit on something very important. Well, The first one is you're an introvert, and a lot of comics are introverts. But I feel, and I used to feel inauthentic, disingenuous when I would be someone else on stage. That being said, somebody told me this like years ago, and it really resonated with me. Where, look, think of yourself as a pie, like a cake, like a pie, and like cut like a thin slice, maybe like 1%, and at least for me, I felt disingenuous because I was afraid that my family or my friends would come and see me at a show and be like, dude, that's not you. That's not how you talk in real life. And now, with this pie example, I'm like, that thin slice is me on stage, actually me. It's not that I'm being
part
fake,
of you.
but it comes out to play in this specific environment.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm fake, it's just that that's me, but in a different, we're all multifaceted.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like saying, well, if I wear high heels and a dress, then I can only ever wear high heels and a dress. I can never wear sweatpants. Like, of course I can. I can be that person. I can be this person. I also think I don't know if this is correct, but I was taught that the definition of an introvert is not that you're shy or outgoing. It's that you recharge by being alone.
Oh, I love it.
It's how you recharge, how you fill yourself up. And so I recharge by being quiet, by being alone, by being in, like, I don't play a lot of loud music at home when I get home from the studio. It has to be silent.
Oh, wow. You know that I relate to that a lot. I think I'm like that too.
Yeah.
My wife bugs me because I prefer silence.
Yes.
And even if the house is silent, I put on my AirPods
To have more silence.
For more
Yes.
silence.
Yes, I would do that.
And I wake up at 5, a lot of days during the week, and I like from 5 to 7 is
Silent.
the best. It's like, and so how do you? I noticed you were recently in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot to run a business, and because I do it, and teach, and perform, and smile, and run a community, and I fucking love it. That being said, it does take a toll on you.
Yeah.
Because it's demanding. It requires energy.
I think it's emotionally demanding.
Yeah. So apart from the silence side of it, how do you recharge?
I recharge. I think my goal in life is to have a day with nothing on my to-do list. It doesn't happen often, but to have a day with no schedule.
Yes.
Where I don't have to look at a clock. That's how I recharge. I recharge by being, with friends, by being by myself, by being with my partner, by being in nature, by being in the ocean. The ocean's a big one for me. Kite surfing. I love the beach.
Wow.
Kite surfing. I kite surf.
Amazing.
Well, I'm learning how to kite surf. I think being out of my normal environment recharges me. Because in Toronto, everywhere I go, I've been teaching for many, many years, and I've taught a lot of people. So almost any time I go out somewhere, whether it's to a shopping mall or to a movie or to an event, I bump into people I know.
Yeah.
Which is lovely. It makes the world feel small. It makes the city feel small. But at the same time, you have to be on.
Yes.
You can't just be in a bad mood or or antisocial. You have to be like, oh, so nice to see you. And, it's great. How is everything? And sometimes I just don't want to be on. So sometimes it's nice to be like anonymous, like a loner.
You know what? I enjoyed that so much of the pandemic.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and I say this with the utmost respect, but a lot of people were having a rough time in the pandemic. I was fucking loving it. Just being at my house with my wife and my son, reading, journaling, not having to go anywhere. And a lot of people be like, oh, but you didn't miss performing? Ironically, because nobody else was performing.
There was no fear of missing out during the pandemic.
FOMO.
Yeah, there was no FOMO.
I was fucking loving it. I was like, this is incredible. I have time for me. And it was like I just run outside because I love running. I come back. I spend time with my loved ones. I watch TV. I eat here. I gotta do nothing. I can just read. It was the best.
No, I was fine too. But also because I always worked from home.
Yeah.
So that didn't change. I mean, it was really hard having the studio closed. That was really sad and difficult. But I love going for walks. I don't really love going out and partying. Like that's just not part of my regular routine at this point in my life. And so.
Do you still go out and dance?
Rarely. No, because I'm in that environment all the time. So for me, a night off is doing something completely different.
Same.
Just going out for dinner or staying home or going to a movie. But I love walking. And I remember in the pandemic, it was so cool because on a Friday night, I'd go for a walk in the ravine. And I always used to go for walks in the ravine, even before the pandemic. But during the pandemic, it was like everyone else was walking in the ravine. And I'm like, cool, we're all doing the same thing on a Friday night. So now I feel fine. I don't feel like, oh, I should really be at some event or I should be going out or I should be going dancing or going to like some nice new restaurant. I'm like, nope, I'm happy just walking in this ravine.
I'm the same because I perform at bars late at night. And when we go out at night, like for my wife, she gets to dress up and she loves to maybe go out for dinner at night or go to dance or to a party with our friends or whatever. But to me, it doesn't mean much anymore because I am at these places already. And it's like I'm on because I gotta perform.
Yeah.
And when my vacation is to be with my family. Or just to do nothing. Yeah. Like just positive boredom, And I really, really resonated with that. Yeah. What is next? I realized that the
Congress
pandemic,
is next.
Yeah, the Congress is next. I realized, thousands of people, right? How many people?
Yeah.
2,000?
Usually 2,000 a day.
That isn't. How many days?
4.
Wow.
Kind of 5 now, but 4.
That is insane. So the pandemic, in many ways, was a forced pause because you would have never paused. And it allows you to reevaluate things. And now you're back at it. It's very similar to us. We have the Latin Comedy Fest. And it forces you to think like, okay, we're back at it. You were teaching online. Now you're teaching in person. For us, we still got to teach online because there's a lot of people who want to take online who were not in Toronto who couldn't take it in person. You have the Congress 18th year. What's next for steps? What's next for you?
Oh my gosh. I think it's to find balance again. I think during the pandemic, I traveled a lot. I had a lot of downtime. I had a lot of time for myself and for being with friends. And then the past 6 months when, we went from kind of everything shut down to our studio being busier than before the pandemic. Plus having the Congress. Normally I would plan the Congress for a year, but I didn't even know until April if it was going to happen. So then I went from having a 12-month planning process to like a 6-month planning process.
Wow.
For the Congress. So I feel like I've worked constantly since April. Like I haven't stopped. So I think I need to get back to that pre-pandemic balance where I worked a lot and I had time off and I had time in my day to do things that filled my cup too. So I think it's just figuring out that balance again.
Beautiful. For the people who are listening and may want to coquetear con la idea, consider having their first salsa class. What should they do? How do they go to steps? But even if they are not in Canada, do you have any advice for people trying to take your first class in terms of attitude, fears, clothes? Any tip that you could give somebody who's taking their first dance salsa class? First of all,
I think that they can probably find a salsa class in any city in the world.
Amazing.
They can email me if they can't find one. There are classes online now. Like
do you teach online?
We don't teach online anymore. We teach in person, but we do have some videos that we had recorded from previously on demand. We just prefer the in-person community aspect of it. We always say in our classes, like, let's just try it. It's not about being perfect. the first few times you might try it, it might be horrible. It's okay. I'm not going to watch. We're just going to try it. And then it gets better after just trying. So I would just say to them, just try it. You never know what you're going to fall in love with. You never know what's going to grab your attention and make you feel passionate about it. And the music is so joyful and so infectious, and the community is really welcoming. And it really goes across borders and ages and backgrounds and status and everything. So I would just tell them to try it. Try it. I would say not even just try it once. Try it like 5 times.
I love it.
And see how you feel.
Are there any aspects of teaching that you enjoy more now than when you started teaching? And what I mean by that is we teach level 1, level 2, level 3, and I love teaching the level 1 because it's their first time, and you get to help people discover themselves. And it's very rewarding, but level 2 is about emceeing and crowd working and dealing with hecklers and tools of comedy. And I really love the level 2 because the emceeing is something that I really enjoy, and the crowd working I've got really good at. Are there things that you're like now at this point in your career where you're like, guys, this is what I'm going to teach because I can, and this is what I really enjoy? Or do you teach everything still?
This is the first time in like 25 years that I'm not teaching the beginner classes, mostly because we have a lot of teachers at the studio. And so I wanted them to have an opportunity, and just with the way the schedule worked out this time, I love teaching beginners. I love teaching like the low intermediate classes where the light bulb goes on and you can see it in their eyes, where the guy is all of a sudden thinking, oh, I can do that. And then I can do that. That goes together. I can make this my own. And you see them start to think for themselves. And so I love that. And then I love teaching the advanced classes where they're just like, they want to be challenged. And the one thing I will say for like our community and the people at our studio, they want to just learn. They're like hungry to learn. So I like teaching every class. I love teaching ladies styling and getting them to like feel more confident in their bodies and getting them to be able to look at themselves in the mirror and be more playful and more whatever they want to be, if it's elegant or sensuous. I love that aspect. I like them all.
What's your favorite salsa song of all times?
Mi Desengaño by Roberto Roena.
Amazing.
It's a lot of R's to say. It's a tough one. Yeah.
Okay, Jen, we've come to the end. The last question that all the guests get. And it's called the champagne question. And it goes like this. If we were to meet a year from now, 2023, with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Jen Aucoin's life?
We are celebrating that there's no more lockdowns, that our studio is still up and running, and we are celebrating that life is balanced.
I love it. You know, I heard a CEO, and she said, I think she was like a new mom. She's still a CEO, juggling with a bunch of things. She's like, fuck work-life balance. Like, there's no such thing.
There's no such thing.
There's no such thing. She's like, I like to call it work-life integration. Like, this month I'll be like 90% mom. Yeah. Next month I'll be like 90% businesswoman. Next month I'll be like 90% wife or whatever I want. But like, it's impossible and it's draining. So I'll try.
And it's frustrating. You feel like you're never there. And I don't mean balance like I'm working this many hours. I mean like being.
Yeah.
I feel like I haven't been as present the past 6 months because I've just been go, go, go. I just want to slow down a bit, be more present, be more mindful.
And sometimes, and I know you know this, but sometimes it's just really, you're 90% businesswoman right now because that's what it's required.
It's the nature of the beast, yeah.
And that's what's required so that you can have the Congress. Because the last 2 years you didn't have the option, you know?
Exactly.
And same as us. Like, October is Hispanic Heritage Month. We're doing the Latin Comedy Fest. Then December is all the corporate comedy, holiday shows. And my wife knows it, and my son feels it or knows it, and it's just the nature of the business. But if you schedule the vacation and the like in marathons, you're like, okay, I'm going to go hard 6 months and prepare for this, and then I'm going to take 3 weeks off or a month off with no running. Even if I want to run, I'll do no running because my body needs to take a break, and the silence and the pondering and how you recharge is critical.
It's also critical for your success and for your productivity.
Yes.
Actually, I will modify my answer with the champagne question. I would like to have at least a 72-hour period where I don't check email.
Oh, that's so good. That is so good.
Because I don't think I've had that in like 10 years. So that's going to be on the list for the next year.
You know, I don't want to toot my own horn here, but my productivity workshop.
I know. I was listening to it on another podcast. I was like, I want to find out about this productivity workshop.
You listened to it on another podcast?
No. I wanted to. I was listening to your podcast and I heard you mention it.
The Productivity Machine Workshop. Yeah. So it's called the Productivity Machine Workshop because it helps you be more productive, but the end goal is to free up time for what matters. So I've become really good at automating the things that I don't like to free up time for the ones that I do like, and being really good at my schedule so that I can free up time for the things that matter. Like little things, really quick things. Like I don't know if it's possible because you manage so many moving parts of a business, but I'm not available for people before 1 p.m. It's just I'm not. Well, that's
it's hard when I have when there's 20 staff that
absolutely. But at the same time, but
then you're productive.
The studio manager, or maybe you're just available to the studio manager. But there's little things that you can start doing. Then I only check email twice a day, like 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. Because really, if it's an emergency,
they'll call you. Yeah.
And then I turn off my phone from 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. to 9 a.m. Because if it's an emergency,
call your wife.
What can I do? I'm sleeping and then I'll run in the mornings, and then I have a Calendly where if somebody wants to talk to me or have a discovery call for a business, they can only book me from Tuesday to Thursdays for each day from 1 to 4 p.m. Because after 5 p.m. I'm a dad or I perform. And the podcast right now we're recording it not at 10:30, 11. But that's important to me, and I want to be fresh.
Yeah.
So that is a different Calendly where people can book me. And there's a billion other tips of delegating, valuing your time.
Yeah.
So for example, one of the most important concepts is that question: what's the one thing I can do such that by doing it everything else will be easier or unnecessary? Which is all about delegating and the 80-20 rule. But the one about valuing your time in the Naval podcast is how much is your hour worth? Because nobody is going to value your time more than you. So in terms of work, let's just round it out. Let's say your hour is worth $100. And if there is something that needs to be fixed in your business that is worth less than $100, you should absolutely delegate it. And if you're being called into a meeting or an interview or something that is or whatever meeting or that is worth less, just say no. Or if you buy something from Amazon, a t-shirt that is worth $20 and it's ripped or broken, and it's going to take you 2 hours to go return.
Right. Just give it away.
Just give it away or throw it out. Donate it. Because for you to go out and print the stuff and take it to UPS or whatever.
It's not worth it.
It's $200 of your time. It's just not worth it.
Yeah.
And I've just become really good at automating the things I don't like so that I could focus on the things that I do like, or the things that make me the most amount of money so that I can use that money to pay for the things that I don't like to do, or to invest so that I can make more money and delegate even more so that I can be free all day to be with my loved ones or do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But
when's your next workshop?
It's I don't know. I used to teach it in person. I mean online and in person. but I put it on the podcast so that everybody can take it for free. Because it's a lot of tips and techniques and hacks.
I did see it on the podcast. Okay, I wasn't sure if that was.
It's a 2-part thing.
Okay.
The first part is all about the pillars, and then the second part is like the billion tips that are gonna be. My promise is that you're gonna be able to free up at least 250 hours of your year, or more, maybe 1,000. You could even free up 1,000. But you just have to be very, very intentional about it. A lot of things is just social media, for a lot of people. I don't know if you're into social media a lot, but my friends, we've come to the end of it. Jen Aucoin and Stephan Dyer on the Stephan Dyer Podcast. Thank you so much, Jen, for being
Thank you
here.
for having me.
It was a pleasure.
It was a pleasure just for me as well.
Nos vemos. A la próxima. Chao, chao.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.